Hey YouTube, how's it going? This is John, Gamester81, and welcome back to my Gamester81 arcade channel. And I've got my arcade cabs, a couple of my arcade cabs behind me, but I just recently picked this one up right here, Donkey Kong, on Craigslist about a week ago as of making this video. And this is by far one of my favorite arcade games of all time. I'm going to show you some gameplay, talk a little bit about the history of this game, and why it's one of my favorites. Thanks for watching, guys. Here is the original marquee. Interesting enough, Donkey Kong came out the same year I was born, 1981. And so it's got the original marquee, it's got the original artwork in here, the screen, plexiglass just pops out. The board and the monitor look great. Now one thing I do want to point out, you'll see that black lines going left to right. That's the camera causing that effect. That's not the monitor, okay? The monitor actually works great when you see it in real life. The only thing that's not original, that from what I see, are the joystick and the buttons. This is usually blue, I believe, top of my head, but they play great, still work just the same, and not a big deal to me. It's just cosmetics. Like if I really wanted to change it out, I probably could do that. And then the instructions are in here either. You'll see black instructions. I can probably find that and install that here behind this this glass right here. Not a big deal. The other thing you'll notice is it wasn't originally a Donkey Kong cab initially because it's orange. Most Donkey Kong Jr. cabinets were orange, okay? But the Donkey Kong original arcade was either you'll find it in two colors. Most common is light blue. But also, you might find some in red. Actually, it's more rare. The reason that is because Radarscope was one of the first Nintendo games arcades released in North America. Didn't do very well at all, so Nintendo of America made a whole bunch, about 2,000 different conversion caps, just some kits, so we could purchase those and swap it out so you can turn in a Radarscope into a Donkey Kong cap. So that would make it red. So you'll find either red or light blue. To find it orange like this is a conversion as well. But I can just repaint it, not a big deal. Take some Goo Gone, take that off, not a big deal. On the side here, it's hard to see, there's a Versus sticker. So at one point, this was a Versus cab. Not sure which one, Nintendo Versus. But I can just take that out with some Goo Gone, and again, repaint it. This white, liner here is actually in pretty good shape. Overall, I paid $350 for this. Most Donkey Kong cabinets, from what I see, sell anywhere from $400 to $500 or more. So I think I got a pretty good deal on it. Look how short it is. I'm going to compare it to my PlayChoice 10, which is actually one of my favorite arcades as well. But you can see it's significantly shorter than my PlayChoice 10, and then I got my Star Wars one shorter than that, and definitely shorter, a lot shorter than the Neo Geo. So pretty short cab overall, but still have a special place in my heart for it for sure. Let's check out some gameplay, guys. There are actually two versions of the game board I do want to point out to you. Here at the title screen, you see it says 1998. It's Nintendo of America. That's the second version. The first version says 1991 Nintendo. And if you have the first version of the board, there's actually a trick you can do in it, where if you're at top of a ladder in the barrel stage, the barrels won't roll on you. The only way you can die is if Donkey Kong throws it at you, down at you, or a fireball gets you. So that's kind of a trick. They took that out later on, so I do want to mention that. Donkey Kong is considered one of the earliest platforming games. There is a beginning, middle, end to it, even though it continues to repeat. You're here with your character Jumpman initially. A lady is the heroine, which you're supposed to save, and you have Donkey Kong, of course. Nintendo, as I mentioned before, had released Radarscope in one of their first arcades in North America, and it flopped. In fact, it was Hiroshi Yamauchi, the president of Nintendo, decided to convert most of the unsold Radarscopes into a new arcade targeting towards the American audience. Hiroshi decided to reach out to a young industrial engineer working for Nintendo at the time, and an employee that had been with Nintendo since 1977, Shigeru Miyamoto. Miyamoto was definitely up for the challenge and accepted the offer, and designed Donkey Kong based on a combination between Popeye and King Kong at the time. Donkey Kong is a prime example of a narrative told in an arcade. You have a love triangle between Jumpman, the lady, and Donkey Kong has a stolen lady from Jumpman, so it's his goal to get her back. Nintendo initially wanted to release a Popeye arcade, but didn't have the rights to do so, so they took the Popeye characters and changed them to fit Donkey Kong. So Popeye turned into Jumpman, Olive Oil turned into Lady, and Bluto turned into Donkey Kong. Interesting enough, the graphical limitations of the arcade board actually helped design Jumpman, who would later become known as Mario. They couldn't really design a mouth, so they gave him a mustache. They couldn't really draw any hair, so they gave him a cap. And in order for the limbs, arms, and legs to move and appear better, they gave him overalls a certain color, so they would. Nintendo wanted Donkey Kong to be very successful in North America, so they decided to pick a name to make it fit the North American audience. Now, it's debatable. There's a whole bunch of rumors as far as how they came up with the name Donkey Kong. One such rumor is that it was initially called Monkey Kong, and when Miyamoto had sent in the paperwork to Nintendo of America, he misspelled it to Donkey Kong. Another unconfirmed rumor is that Miyamoto wanted to name the game Stubborn Gorilla, or Silly Gorilla, and looked into a Japanese-English dictionary and came up with the words Donkey Kong, with Kong being a very popular word in Japan for the use of ape. Once Miyamoto had completed Donkey Kong, he had sent it over to Nintendo of America to try out. And initially, Nintendo of America were not fans of the Donkey Kong game. In fact, they didn't like it because it was so different than the typical shooters and maze games you'd have back in the arcade. So what Nintendo of America decided to do is change the names of a couple of the main characters. They kept the name Donkey Kong for the ape, since that's what the arcade was called. But they changed Lady to her name Pauline, named after Polly James, who was the wife of the office manager, Don James. So a lot of people think that the main character is Princess Toadstool, but actually her name is Pauline. They also changed the name Jumpman to, his name was Mario, named after Mario Segal, the landlord of Nintendo of America headquarters during the time. Nintendo of America was based in Redmond, Washington in the early 80s, and still is today, in fact. At the time, they decided to release a couple of arcades, Donkey Kong arcades, in select bars around the Seattle area. And what they found was that these bars, the arcades, were averaging over $30 a day, or 120 plays each day. They were very popular and successful. So Nintendo of America decided to convert the Radarscopes, the 2000 Radarscope arcades that weren't selling, and convert those to Donkey Kong arcades, and they sold those right away. At one point, Nintendo was selling 4,000 Donkey Kong arcade machines a month, and by June of 1982, they had sold 60,000 Donkey Kong arcade games. Overall, Nintendo had earned $180 million in the sales of Donkey Kong the first year alone. Due to the success of Donkey Kong Arcade, Nintendo decided to release a number of sequels. They released in 1982 Donkey Kong Jr., which was successful as well, and in 1983 they released Donkey Kong 3. Donkey Kong has been released on a whole bunch of classic computers, consoles, and handhelds. In fact, Nintendo teamed up with Coleco when the ColecoVision was released, as Donkey Kong was a pack-in for the system, making the ColecoVision sell a bunch of systems and making it a popular system back in the day. In fact, Atari was so upset that Nintendo had agreed to do a pack-in with the ColecoVision and partner up with Coleco, that when a point where that Nintendo Entertainment System was released in 1985, Nintendo actually initially approached Atari about distribution. Atari refused because they were super bitter. The Donkey Kong arcade is different than most home ports that you'll find. In most home ports, there's only 3 stages, whereas in the arcade you have 4. Another significant difference is the difficulty. The arcade is so much harder than any home ports that you'll find. Now, there's also a significant spin-off of the Donkey Kong arcade, which was later known as Mario Brothers, which would also turn into Super Mario Brothers, and eventually a whole line of series of Mario games. Although today we know Mario as a plumber, initially in Donkey Kong he's actually a carpenter, hence this first stage where he has these ladders and he's at a construction site trying to save Pauline. Now, as you continue on, the game gets more difficult and more difficult. You got to watch for these fireballs at the very bottom. The barrels are completely random. You don't know where they're going to fall. They could fall down any ladder, and so the object is to jump over them. Now you can get this hammer as I'm getting here now, which you're not invincible with the hammer by all means, because you can still die as I just did. But once you get a hammer, you can destroy the barrels, which was worth 300 points. When you jump over a barrel, it's worth 100 points. On the top right of the screen, you'll see a bonus, and that's a timer. Now, if that goes down to 0, you die. So the quicker you pass the stage, the more points you will accumulate. In 2007, a movie called King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters was released in theaters, a limited release, and also on DVD later on. The documentary basically followed 2 Donkey Kong players, Billy Mitchell and Steve Wiebe, as they fight it out for the top score on Donkey Kong. Since the release of King of Kong, the excitement for Donkey Kong has exploded and has grown significantly over the last couple of years. There are tournaments now for the highest spot on Donkey Kong, and the highest spot actually held by Hank Chen, who has 1,068,000 points, closely followed by Steve Wiebe and Billy Mitchell in third. There's an upcoming event in March of 2011, which is called the Kong Off, which will hold the top Donkey Kong players all over the world. So Donkey Kong has taken Pauline and now is the 4th stage, which you don't really see in too many home ports. This stage, the gamers call it the Pie Factory, although I believe it's supposed to be cement because it looks like pies, and the object is at the very top. You gotta avoid these fireballs while you're doing so. On a number of stages, you'll see various objects within the stage, for example, the umbrella to the right. Now, these don't really add anything to the game other than points, so initially they start with 300 points and they get to 500 and then get more and more as you go on throughout the game. So if you're looking for points, definitely pick them up. I just got 800 points for picking that one up. One thing that makes this particular stage difficult are the conveyor belts. They randomly change directions, and the fireballs are actually random as well. So you gotta make sure you time everything right, otherwise you will die. A lot of these cutscenes, as you see here, were taken out of the home ports as well, which you don't necessarily see in the home ports. The only 2 versions I'm aware of that have the Pie Factory and the cutscenes are the Coleco Adam computer version and the Atari computer version as well. Donkey Kong for me has a special place in my heart because I remember I have so many fond memories playing it growing up. I play a lot even today, and it never gets old. It's really difficult, really unpredictable, and because of that, the replay value is super high. I may never get the top score in Donkey Kong, but I always have fun trying. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Thanks for watching. We'll have another video up shortly. Happy gaming and take care.